we have built a world that's very good on superficial connection. And in doing so, said to connect, you must perform alongside these criteria. To belong here, you must look like this, you must talk like this, you must walk like this, you must work like this, you must say these things. And anything that goes against the grain instantly means you don't belong. And so, how is it that we can get good at belonging if we're still telling people they need to perform in a certain way? How is it that we're one of the most connected generations of humans to exist, yet loneliness is increasing? People feel more disconnected and like they don't belong. It just doesn't really make any sense, does it? But when you start to unpack the difference between connection and belonging and the infrastructure we've built through things like social media and emails and video chats, you start to understand where we've gone wrong. You see, as humans, we were always designed to have that connection with one another in real life. Yet, as we built the infrastructure around emails, around social media platforms, around being able to pick up the video call button on our phone and FaceTime one another, we've lost the physical need to be around each other. Now, I love a video chat as much as the next person. I love social media for the friendships that I've built that maybe I never would have come across. But what I know is that it doesn't replace connection in real life. And this is why, even though I can have conversations with 10 or 20 people in a day, I can get to the end of it and feel like, where are my people at? Like, where do I actually belong? Who am I deeply connected with today? And it's because these connections that we have online through Teams or Zoom or through a social media chat are often transactional. They're based on a task or a topic, and we're not always showing up as our true self. We're hiding behind a fake username, we're sitting in a meeting with our camera off, or we're not actually that invested. And this is the difference between connection and the multi-layered approaches of connection and where belonging comes into place. Now, I'm a fan of video chat, and I know that I wouldn't be able to connect with my family as much as I do without that. You see, I live over 1,000 kilometers away from my brothers and my sister and my nephews and my niece, and the video chat function that we have at our fingertips is crucial. Once or twice a week with my niece, who is almost 2, we are video chatting, we are talking. Well, she's doing a lot of talking, I'm doing a lot of being carried around in a basket or being put in a doll's house. But, the idea of me being there with her, it's real. She gets to see my face, she gets to hear my voice, but it doesn't replace me being there in real life. It doesn't replace the physical touch. It doesn't replace the cuddles. It doesn't replace playing with each other with the doll's house, as opposed to me just being on a screen in the doll's house. Now, as much as I find joy in these moments, it does have me wondering, have we gone too far down the social media path, down the infrastructure of connection at our fingertips, and lost the ability to connect as humans and as people and to understand the real need for that? If you don't know who I am, my name's Amy Green, and this is the Rethinking Success podcast. Now, today we are obviously talking about belonging, this real human need that we all have. And it's actually the 5th of 6 paradoxes in my new book, The Wellness Paradox. And I want to talk it through with you because I think it's so crucial. Belonging feels like it should be getting easier. We've never had more accessibility to communities before. Yet, are we actually connecting in ways that build belonging? Are we doing it in ways that are healthy for us? Are we doing it in ways that support us to be well and happy? Or are we actually so used to these transactional pings and notifications going off that we haven't built things that allow us to truly belong? And so, therefore, even though we're connected, we don't actually belong anywhere. And loneliness is one of the factors that we're seeing because of this. Why is it so hard to find our people when we're surrounded by people all of the time? Now, connection and belonging are not the same thing. Here's what I need you to know. Connection, in the broadest of senses, can be very transactional. It can be contact, exchange, visibility, and belonging is different. Belonging is about the experiences that you have. It's about being known, accepted, valued for who you are. You don't have to produce or perform. You can just show up, you can be yourself, and you don't have to constantly think about filtering what you might say or what you might wear or what it is that you might comment, because The people around you are there for you. Now, one of my favorite books that talks about connection is by Vivek Murthy. And Vivek Murthy used to be the US general surgeon, and he did some great work leading the investigations into the loneliness pandemic that we were seeing. Or epidemic, sorry. And what his research found out from this was that there are three types of connection, and many of us aren't getting past the first one. So the three levels are transactional, relational, and intimate. Transactional connection is the very broad, hi, how are you? How was your day? That you might say to a colleague, to the person that is making your coffee, or when you go into a store. That it doesn't get much deeper than that. Yeah, it's just very transactional. In a work context, it could even go down to, hi, how are you? Have you got this project for me? Hi, how are you? Have you got this report? We don't really spend much time on the how are you bit. We're just there for that objective, that task, that transaction. So that's the first level of connection that we might have with someone. The second level is relational. Now, this is where you do know people a little bit further. They might be people in your workplace that you sit around and have lunch with, you have a chat with, you go grab a coffee with, this for your morning break. You know a little bit about their life. You don't know everything and you don't divulge everything, but you feel a bit more comfortable with these people. You kind of know who they are, what they're about, and you talk a little bit more deeply than just a transactional level. And then we have our intimate connections. Now, in our intimate connections, the people in that really inner circle are very far and few between. They're people that we have chosen. They're people we have high trust with. It's usually, a sibling you might be close with, your partner, a best friend, someone who really gets the ins and outs of all the intricacies of your life, your work, your personal, and everything in between. Now, these people, they hold you, they know you, and they provide a space for you to truly belong. But many of us now don't always get this deep level of connection. The transactional exists, but for some, you may not even leave their house, who may very rarely venture outside because we now work from home, because we can work remotely wherever we choose, because we can order groceries to our door and don't actually have to go to the store. We may not even be getting that really low level transactional connection with people. Someone may not even say hello to us in a whole day if we don't go out of our house. And for some people, this is what's happening. The next level around relational, most of us will have on some level people that we have a different type of connection with. And then, of course, that intimate is really reserved, but not everyone is getting all of these different levels of connection. And this is why loneliness is increasing, because in order to feel like we belong, we need to have that intimate and relational connection as well. Now, the Loneliness Commission from the US Surgeon General, the Australian Social Connection Research, it's all pointing to the same thing. It all says the same thing. It's not the quantity of connection, because we know that there's quantity around there through social platforms, through emails, through our phones going off all the time. It's actually the quality. It's what kind of connection produces belonging. Are we building more of it, or are we building less of it? And as you might have picked up on, what's actually happening is we're building less and less opportunities for connection that promotes belonging. Because even though we might have multi layers of connection existing, it doesn't mean we instantly get belonging. They're not the same thing. Now, I know from being in workplaces that sometimes these words are swapped out for one another, and that's not exactly how it works. They are different. So, what I'm going to share with you is what belonging requires, because it's far more than just saying hi or good morning to the person that makes your coffee. Belonging is about being seen as you are. Belonging is about knowing you can show up and not have to perform. There's reciprocity. So, what I do for you, you do for me. There's that genuine investment that we know and we care about one another. And there's shared context and continuity over time. We know what the agreed expectations of the relationship are. We feel safe, we feel seen, we feel valued. We know in the workplace that we might, and in personal life too, that true belonging can exist when psychological safety is high. We might disagree, we might take a risk, we might share something vulnerable, and we know we're not going to be ridiculed or judged. We can only do that when we feel like belonging exists. Transactional connection is not enough to allow that to occur. And belonging, unlike connection, is actually built quite slowly. It doesn't just happen instantly. It's not just saying hi and all of a sudden belonging occurs. It doesn't happen like that. We have to consider belonging alongside opportunities for connection so that it builds slowly. If we're trying to do it at speed or trying to do it at scale, we're not going to get belonging to happen because that's not how it works. Now, think about what's happened with digital connection. It's fast, we build it immensely quickly, it's at scale. It's often a curated version of ourselves, whether it's a curated version that is on camera, whether it's in the comments we're writing. There's low reciprocity. It's not you give, I give, and there's something in it for me. We can just do whatever. And some people don't care about what's happening on the other end. Not me, but we all have seen those trolling comments or posts. And when people are engaging with things like that, it's really about what they want out of it. They're not thinking about how it might impact other people. And so the pressure is low for connection there. The pressure is low for belonging because that's not the driver. And so we can't assume that just because people are connected, that belonging is going to occur. Now, one of the interesting things about belonging in the workplace is that when we continually focus on success and output and productivity, we also can start to erode belonging in different ways. And you might think, well, how does that happen? That doesn't really make sense. If we promote success in our workplace culture, if we promote always going to the next thing, then wouldn't people feel like they're belonging because they achieve? Well, not exactly, because when we have this individual achievement, this upward mobility or constant optimization, the next thing and the next thing and the next thing to produce, it can actually work against the conditions that support belonging. Because what we have here is an identity that's built on performance and output, not actually built on authenticity, not actually built on being who you are, not actually being built on being genuine. And so we're saying that your worthiness comes from showing up, doing the task, and being productive. And that's not actually how we feel belonging. We want people to be themselves. And when we constantly flip the status to productivity and output, which is what the current version of success tells us, we limit people's ability to feel like they can actually belong. And so this status, this idea that belonging just happens through work naturally as we do our job, isn't actually possible if we don't give people time to slow down, to be vulnerable, and we have this constant focus on achievement can become quite dangerous. In order actually getting people to have micro moments of connection that allow belonging to occur. And so we've got to start to see that success and goal setting and always doing the next best thing isn't always supportive of belonging because it puts people in this competitive space. It pins people against each other. And workplaces can be quite guilty of this. Workplaces can be places where we focus on what comes next, what is the next best thing. And so if we don't have places that allow people to be themselves, then how do we get true belonging? Now, this links to the idea that there is a performance of belonging and that we feel like, the more we do, the more we're going to belong. And social media has created this phenomenon. And, in some ways, we've taken on this ourselves. The better we perform or show what we've achieved, the more people are going to think we're actually worthy of something and hold us to a higher status and therefore will belong. It's so interesting to me that we've done this with how do you think about success and belonging? I'll belong when? I'll be worthy when? People will value me when? Workplace and personal life. And I don't actually think that way of thinking is really going to serve us. We've done it through independence as well. In order to be seen as successful, I need to be independent. Therefore, I can't rely on my friends. I can't rely on my family. I can't rely on my colleagues because people will think I'm not good enough. And so even though reciprocity is what can drive belonging, we've somehow said no, don't rely on other people. Don't give to get. Don't be generous. Do it on your own because that's a sign of success. Only that way of thinking has actually pushed us into a space of feeling alone and not having true belonging. Even if we think about it in terms of how our structures are designed around livability where we live, it can be said that the more successful you are, the bigger your house is, you go with somewhere else, away from family and friends, like that's what you should be doing. maybe not friends, but definitely family. You want to move out, get a house of your own, start your own independence. And even that way of thinking, to move away from family structures, because that's successful, has eroded where we get belonging from. We no longer live in communities around family. We no longer see generations of people living together or near each other to support one another. We've created these isolated pieces of independence because we somehow thought that was success. And in doing so, we eroded what we really need to connect and belong. And that just doesn't make any sense to me. And so, what we have to understand in the workplace is that it's not about performing, and that if we think the more we perform, the better we're going to be, which means the more we're going to be accepted and belong, it may be the less we're being ourselves. And that's not really what we want. So we have to start to think about, well, how are we letting people be themselves, even if it means they're not performing to this overachieving productivity that we once said was the goal. Now, I'm not saying we lower standards or performance, I'm definitely not saying that, but if that's all we focus on, are we forgetting that there's people behind the doing? Your people aren't your workflow, your people aren't your product, your people aren't your measures of success in terms of output. They're people first. But when we constantly see people as product or people as performance or people as the income that we make, we're losing the humanness behind it. So here's what I want to say. Belonging isn't about connecting more. It's never about transactional moments of connection. It's not the morning teas. It's not the social events. It's not the afternoon gatherings, although those things can help to build a true belonging. It's something that emerges when we build conditions that are right, when we're known, when we're safe, when we know you can be vulnerable and we don't have to perform to be in the room. We don't have to filter what we say, where anything is within reason and within appropriateness, where we're encouraged to share. But we have built a world that's very good on superficial connection. And in doing so, said to connect, you must perform alongside these criteria. To belong here, you must look like this, you must talk like this, you must walk like this, you must work like this, you must say these things. And anything that goes against the grain instantly means you don't belong. And so how is it that we can get good at belonging if we're still telling people they need to perform in a certain way? So I'm wondering if in your workplace, have you set certain objectives around how people need to perform, which may actually be undermining opportunities to belong? It's something to think about, right? Now, that's not to say we can't have high standards and high performance and high expectations and professionalism, like I've already mentioned. But if we're really stuck in some ways, then are people allowed to show up as themselves? Are people able to share? And what does this look like in our own lives, in our own personal opportunities for connection? Do we have lots of transactional connection and maybe not relational or intimate? Is there some work to be done around finding different communities? I know certainly that's something for me that I'm always thinking about. So it's a really interesting to think about, have we structured work and the world and the way we live right now to be highly connected but with lower levels of belonging? And this is why we're seeing such an impact on people feeling lonely, especially young people. And how do we start to shift that? So in the next episode, I'm going to talk to you specifically about the paradox that underpins belonging and what we've actually been searching for that we need to pay more attention to, even though we mightn't know it. And, it's a question I find genuinely moving because I think there are a lot of people searching for a more simpler way to connect and belong, but it's also much harder to find. As always, I'm Amy. I'll see you in the next episode around the paradox of belonging and our search for what it actually means. What are we really searching for when we say belonging? But otherwise, if you need anything, if you have anything you want to share, if you found this interesting, let me know and I'll see you somewhere soon. Have a great day, night, evening, whatever time it is for you. Bye.